Hey guys, it's Kevin and my review for Ammonite. So what Ammonite's essentially about is we center on the character of Mary Anning, and she is this paleontologist of sorts. She's very quiet and reserved in that way, and she, likes to sell these fossils, and she does it in an effort to support her mother, but basically one day she ends up selling this fossil to this couple, and the husband of this couple, his wife Charlotte, is very much in a bad state. She's recently lost someone close to her, and so she's very much grieving in that way. And so basically he hires her as an opportunity to care for his wife, starts to take walks with her, and hopefully get her to change her demeanor overall. And in doing so, Mary starts to realize that she has a fond attachment to Charlotte, and the rest of the film is, do they really want to pursue this? What are the, consequences of them doing so, and can this relationship really last if it does go there? So Ammonite overall, I was very excited for this film. I mean, especially coming off a film like Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I was very much ready for another period piece revolved around lesbians in that way, but especially looking at the cast here, I mean, just the two actresses alone, I expect this to be something really great. It seemed like a film that was going to get a lot of Oscars and things like that, and then it just kind of disappeared. Like, it came out and nobody really talked about it, and I was really kind of wondering why, so I waited for this film to come out. It finally came on to VOD. I watched it, and I gotta say, I was kind of disappointed. Ammonite definitely has a lot of things that I do appreciate about it, but overall, I think as a film, it very much fell short for me, and I think it just didn't really do what I wanted it to overall, unfortunately, but we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And like I said, that's definitely, I think, the biggest draw going into this movie. I mean, you look at this cast here, and it's just absolutely incredible, especially our main two actresses here. But the absolute standout, and the person I think that really saves this film for me, is Kate Winslet, who gives one of her most impressive performances that I've seen from her in quite a bit. And it's mainly because Mary Anning is such a reserved type character. She never gets upset. She never has that emotional outburst. She's so to herself throughout the entire movie. She's stone cold in that way, and that can be very hard to pull off in a convincing manner, but Winslet really does go for it, and I was very impressed by her performance here. You understand why Mary is this way. You understand why she doesn't really process emotions in the way that a lot of people do, and I think Winslet did a really good job with that here, even in moments where the character wasn't really working for me. I thought overall Winslet was just really did a really good job in handling this character. I was very impressed by what she ended up doing here. And then Saoirse Ronan as well, she gives a really strong performance. She's definitely more emotional. She's definitely a bit more upbeat than Winslet, and I thought she always does a great job, and that's still very much the case here. I really did enjoy her performance in this film. What's surprising to me, though, is that the chemistry between these two actresses is really just not there, and it honestly might be the thing that hurts this film the most for me. You really don't feel the passion between these two. You understand that they're supposed to care about each other, but while watching the film, it just, especially when they start to get deeper into their relationship, I just didn't feel that these two were in love. I didn't feel like these two had this genuine connection for each other. It just felt very forced. And again, I think Winslet and Ronan gave good individual performances, but just something about their chemistry was just not really there for me. It just wasn't really working in the film. It felt very dispassionate, and I just thought that was very strange in this film. I mean, this is a romantic drama. It's supposed to anchor the movie, and it's just not there at all, and I think that's what really hurts this film, unfortunately. I just did not really feel the chemistry was there throughout the film. The two performances, again, they do elevate this movie, but their chemistry just was not there in this film. We get to, though, the directing and the writing, and that is, I think, the other thing that really just didn't really work for me in this movie. Francis Lee's his directing is not bad here. He's clearly trying to do a far more subtle film than I think a lot of people are expecting. This is not a very showy film. It's very intimate in that way, and I thought his directing was very good here. He presents things in a very realistic and very patient manner, and I really did like his directing throughout this film. You know, I think the film does a good job of staying very subtle, staying very realistic in that way. It doesn't really go any more over the top. It never really tries to be anything more than that. And so I do think Francis Lee did a good job. And I did feel that he had passion going into this movie. I felt like he was trying to do something here. And I enjoyed his directing in the film, but the writing, on the other hand, is another element that just didn't really work for me in this movie. And I will say, the first, 40 minutes, I actually was kind of liking this. I thought the setup with Mary, especially, was really good. You understand that Mary is someone that really cares about these fossils. This is something that matters a lot to her. She doesn't really have any friends. There's not really a lot of people that she interacts with. She just likes doing things on her own. She's very independent in that way, and I thought as a character, I did find myself gravitating towards her. You know, I liked what they ended up doing with her as a character in the beginning of this film. But again, you understand how that independence is very crucial to who Mary really is. And contrasting that with the character of Charlotte, someone who is very much dependent in that way and doesn't really, hasn't really made a lot of decisions for herself because her husband, you can tell, is very controlling in that way. I thought there was a pretty good contrast there, and you do understand why these two would bond in that way. There are things that Charlotte has gone through that she can let, Mary in on, and vice versa. And I think the film did a really good job telling that story. The problem is, once the actual story started, I really started to find myself getting disinterested because I never really felt the film fully went for it in terms of the story. It feels like once the two fell in love, they just didn't really know what to do with this film. And that was disappointing to me because I felt like this is a film that's always building to something big. You always feel like, oh, we're starting to get there. Oh, it's starting to dive more into this specific issue, because the film does present issues that these two have in their relationship. It's not like it's not there, it just does it in a very subtle way. I just never really felt like it went anywhere for me. It felt like we were just kind of like at a stall. And again, I understand that Mary is a very independent character, but that actually starts to work against the film because of the fact that there just isn't a lot of growth for either of these two characters. I feel like Charlotte had some sort of growth, but Mary never really did because she kind of knows what she wants throughout a good portion of this movie, and I just didn't really feel like as a story it engaged me all that much, and I felt like they just didn't really know what to do for a good portion of it. And that was just really disappointing me here. I felt like maybe, I don't know if the film could have taken some time more to delve deeper into some of these characters, but it just didn't feel like they really did, especially when it came to Mary and the whole subplot with her mother. I really needed more there, and I felt like there just wasn't enough that they ended up doing. And I think definitely they could have done more there, but again, the biggest issue is just the relationship itself, and maybe it's because I've seen some really great romantic dramas lately, but I just never really felt the film took full advantage of this relationship. It felt like we were just kind of given a sample of what this relationship could be like. We were given some ideas of what it could be like, but we never got the full experience. It never felt like we dived nearly as deep into this as we really could have, and I just didn't really like that. There's also a lot of plot points that are set up here that are just kind of abandoned. Like, Charlotte's husband kind of disappears in this movie. He doesn't really have a lot of relevance in this film after what ends up going on, and I feel like he very much should have. I mean, it's not like he's not in the film. He comes back, like, towards the end of it, but I felt like they could have done a lot more with that character, and they just really didn't, and I thought that was also very disappointing. There's this other guy that shows up as well, this doctor character that really doesn't have much to do here either, so yeah, as a screenplay, I just was not very impressed by it. You know, I think that's something that it just left me wanting a lot more, and so I can't say that the screenplay here is really all that impressive, because I just feel like there was a lot more they could have done here. The cinematography, though, is absolutely gorgeous in this film. I mean, unlike Portugal on Fire, this is a film that is very dark, and it's very dim in that way, you know, and I think that the cinematography is really well handled in that way. You feel like you're in this time period of the 1800s, you know, it really does feel like a lived-in location. In fact, there's a lot of scenes in this movie where there's almost no dialogue. There's no dialogue in this film until the first, like, 15 minutes of it, which was a really interesting choice, and was something that I noticed right away. I'm like, is there gonna be any talking in this movie? Like, it was very quiet, and again, it's supposed to reflect how Mary is so socially awkward in that way, and I think that's something that the film did a really good job with, and I did appreciate that about this film, and I think the cinematography reflects that very nicely, and I really did like that. But my other problem with this film actually was the sound design, which is a really interesting thing. Again, it might sound like a weird issue, but there are many points in this movie where there are just things that are too loud. For example, there's a beach scene that's really well filmed, and these waves that are very loud, but they're too loud to the point where they're overpowering the dialogue between the characters. I was watching this with my girlfriend, and I said, like, can you hear what they're saying? And she said no. So, like, it's not just me. Like, this is a problem. Like, this is not, I should not have to ask, like, you know, someone else I'm watching this movie with if they can hear the fucking movie, because, like, they should have, you know, really worked on that. So that was a really weird issue for me, but it was definitely something that hindered my overall experience, and I didn't really like that. Also, the editing, I do not think this film was very well paced at all. I think the first act, like I said, was really good. I actually was liking the first act of this movie, but once we got to the second act, it really just kind of dragged out from there until we get to the ending, which really is just such a slog to get through after a while, and I just found myself getting very bored. Even the way the movie wraps up, it's not particularly anything that effective or surprising. It just kind of ends, and I just don't think it was a very satisfying ending overall. Again, Ammonite's a film that I think had a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of things it could have dived into, but as a film, it just never really got there for me. It does have really good performances from Kate Winslet and Saoirse Ronan, but they do lack chemistry. They do very clearly lack chemistry in the film. It feels very dispassionate as a result, and because that, I just found myself having a very hard time engaging in the story. I think there needed to be a lot more going on. I think we needed to really dive deeper into the emotional conflict here, and we just really didn't. And so, as a whole, Ammonite is a film that I was very disappointed by. I found this film to just be very dull, and I am going to give Ammonite overall a C. It honestly makes a lot of sense why people have not really been talking about this film, because it really, unfortunately, isn't anything that special. It's probably just going to make you think of better romantic dramas, honestly. But that's in my review of Ammonite. Let me know what you guys saw of this movie. All left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.